So we're going to start to look at the Mi-Teintes range and what's available at Delta and some of the key differences between the two papers. So here we have two high quality pastel papers, each with distinct characteristics that cater to different artistic styles and techniques. So you'll see the Mi-Teintes Classic. This is the original Mi-Teintes. This is a dual surface paper. So one side has a smooth texture and the other side has more of a honeycomb texture. So this gives a lot of flexibility for the artist and how they work. This is a pulp dyed cotton paper. So what this means is the color runs all the way through the paper, and that makes it resistant to fading over time. So this paper is great for hard pastels, soft pastels, as well as colored pencils. And then we have the new Mi-Teintes Velvet Paper, which is on the right-hand side. So this is our latest edition. This paper features a velvet soft surface, and it provides the artist with excellent pigment bond without being too abrasive. So it's designed for specifically for layering, but it also accepts wet and dry media. So if you're a mixed media artist, this is a fantastic paper. And it's a great option if you want smooth blending in your work, if you want a smooth application without wearing down your instruments too much. So oftentimes with a sanded paper, it can be more abrasive. So your soft pastels, there's more dust and you can use your pastels less because it goes through them relatively quickly. So this is a visual that we're going to look at to compare how the pastels perform on the two different papers. So here we have the same tulip artwork created on the two surfaces, the Mi-Teintes Original and the Mi-Teintes Velvet. So we're just going to break down some of the key differences that we see here. So on the left, which is the Mi-Teintes Original, you'll notice the honeycomb grain showing through some of the pastel application. This textured surface can create a more dynamic look, more expressive, but it also requires heavier layering to fully cover the texture. So if you're an artist that likes more texture and likes a more traditional pastel effect, this is a really great option for you. And now on the right, that's where we have the new Mi-Teintes Velvet paper. So you can see the differences and you can see how this paper allows for multiple layers of pastel without filling the tooth too quickly. So the surface is a lot softer than a sanded paper, but still provides really excellent pigment adhesion. On a lot of the work that I've done on this pastel paper, I actually don't need to use a fixative, which is really nice because it has really great grip to it. But it does make it also ideal for gradual color building, any detail work, soft pastel techniques. But as I mentioned, you can also use this with any wet media. So for any watercolor techniques, you can use solvent. It holds up really well. There's no buckling, and it doesn't deteriorate the paper. So depending on your technique and your preference, you can choose a surface that best suits your style, whether you want textured and expressive or soft, blendable, and more layer friendly. So we're going to start to just take a deeper dive into the Mi-Teintes Velvet now that you have an overview of the line that's available at Delta. So the Mi-Teintes Velvet is 55% cotton content. So this is really great for durability and flexibility. It gives a high quality feel, enhanced durability compared to some other papers that may be more cellulose based. And the cotton fibers generally have a natural strength to them, which makes them more resistant to tearing, warping, and crumbling, especially when that's under really heavy application. So if you're using more wet medium, if you like to be a little bit more aggressive with the pastel and do more heavy layering, it'll hold up really well to that. Then one of the most important ones is it's acid free and archival. So what this means is the paper won't yellow or degrade over time. And if you're spending hours on a piece, you want that piece to last for years or even generations, right? Because you're putting so much time into it. So this is a really important factor when it's coming to selecting a paper for a finished piece of artwork. If you're just looking for a paper that's just more sketching and just getting your ideas going, then you could use a newsprint or a sketching paper for that purpose. And then lastly, here we have a high light fastness in this paper. And what light fastness refers to is how well a color resists fading when it's exposed to light over time. So the Mi-Teintes Velvet line is highly light fast, so your artwork will retain its original vibrancy for years without needing a fixative. So artists use a variety of pastels, and this includes some soft pastels, hard pastels, pastel pencils, and pan pastels. And each require a surface that can properly hold pigment and allow for techniques like blending, layering, and mixed media applications. So you'll see here, I have a comparison from a sanded surface, which is a lot of the pastel papers that you may see available, and then a more fibrous structure. So on the left, we see a typical sanded surface, and sanded paper is great for blending because it does grip the pigments really well, but it can be harsh on pastels, as I mentioned. So it does cause them to wear down relatively quickly. And then on the right, we have the velvets structure, which is more fibrous. It's designed specifically for layering. So this means you can build up multiple layers without filling the tooth of the paper too quickly. So you'll notice your colors are more rich, you have more depth to your work. You'll have more control when you get to the finer details. So if you want that, if you're an artist that wants more balance and more control of your layering and softness without all the excess dust or pastel breakage, then this is an excellent option. So here I've created a really simple pair study to highlight some of the key qualities of the pastel paper. So as you can see, it allows for really smooth transitions and vivid colors. The pigments blend really seamlessly, making it really easy to create soft gradients, especially in areas of light and shadow. The layering and erasability is really strong on this paper, so you can build those layers without the surface becoming overloaded. And if you need to, then you can erase even heavy applications. You can erase really cleanly without disturbing the underlying layers too much. Strong pigment adhesion and blendability. The pastels grip really well to the surface, but still allow for soft blending. So you can see that in the transition of the shadow from the pear. And as I mentioned, when I'm creating a work with pastels on this paper, because that grip is so strong, I don't use a fixative. That's really all preference. You certainly can, but it's not necessary because it really adheres quite well to this paper. And the tooth, it just has, if you haven't felt the velvet paper before, it has enough texture to hold the pastel, but it also has enough to make it easy to work with and easy to move some of those pigments around. The minimal dust control is great. So unlike some pastels that produce a lot of dust, this allows for more precision, and reduced mess. And lastly, its durability with solvents and water. From testing that I've done, it can withstand multiple applications of wet techniques. So it makes it really versatile if you're a mixed media artist, or even if you prefer to use solvents or use water in your pastel applications for blending. And I've noticed there's little to no color shift. Oftentimes with pastel paper, when you put your pastel down and then you blend with water or blend with a solvent, you'll notice that it's a little bit darker, or it dilutes the color a little bit. I don't have that with this paper. The color is relatively similar to before you put the solvent down. So one thing that I'll do before I'm starting with a piece of work is I will do some experiments on the surface that I'm using, but also some experiments to get to know maybe the color mediums that I'm using. So this first exercise, this really gives you a feel for the layering capabilities of the paper. So, to really get a feel for yourself, I would recommend doing this. You don't have to do it right now, especially if you don't have the paper already. But this is something that you can refer to after because this is being recorded. So you can look at it after and go at your own pace, pause the video when you need to. But this is a really great resource, especially if you are trying pastel papers under different brands. Every single paper performs very differently. So the more you do these tests, the more you'll get a feel for the type of things that work for you, the type of things that don't. But it could also vary depending on the artwork that you're doing at that time. So if I want a piece of paper with more layering because I'm doing something more realistic, then I would opt for a different paper than, say, one that would be more textured. So this first hands-on exercise, it's really simple. There's a sample of it on the left here. So all you do is take a sheet of your Mi-Teintes Velvet paper and you apply one long stroke of pastel. And you just do this using light pressure down your paper. And you'll see I use different colors of that pastel over that same stroke, and you can see a little bit of the previous stroke before it. So what this will do, this will give you an idea for how many layers your paper can take um, without saturating it too much. And you'll also notice the minimal amount of dust when you're doing this application. But if you look at the swatch on the side,
I didn't get that. Could you
you'll
tell me again?
see if you look at the swatch on the side, sorry, my computer's going nuts here. If you look at the sample on the side, you'll see that the colors also stay very vibrant. So this is done on the black paper, which is one of my favorites to work with. The second test, this is part two of the first application. This is the blending capabilities. So on the side of that same sheet that you used or on a new sheet, I'll do one large swatch using two different colors. So you'll see on the right-hand side, I used blue, and on the left-hand side, I used white. So with those two, I go down the swatch and I use different tools. So I would do one experiment with my finger, so just blending with my finger, one with a cloth or a sponge, and one with a brush and one with a wet brush.
Sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
And what you'll notice is you'll see even with the wet brush, it does dilute it a little bit. So it does make a great application for if you want more watercolor techniques and more of a watercolor feel to your pastel painting. But it doesn't change the lightness of the pigment.
Sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
And now our second exercise, this is a great one to have because it shows how to work in different applications and shows how well the liftability is. It'll also show you how well the texture and tooth performs against those different applications. So what I've done here on the left is I've divided my sheet into two sections. So using a soft pastel, I'll make a light stroke, so just using light pressure, and then I'll do a dark stroke beside it. I'll do both a thick and a thin stroke. And with that, I'll observe the texture and tooth of the paper. So you can see on the right-hand side, you can see how saturated that paper is. And that's just a first layer. But you'll see it fills in really nicely. It's a really smooth application. And the lighter stroke, you still get a really even texture. You pick some of the texture from the paper, but it's very even. One thing about this paper is if you look at a sheet that you haven't used yet, there's no imperfections on this sheet. It's a really, really even surface. So what I did after these applications, just to see how well the pigment lifted off, is I used a kneadable eraser to just lift off some of that pigment. And you'll see even on the darker, heavier application, it came off really well. So just before I go over some of the different colors and pad options that are available in the line, I just want to reiterate that some of those exercises, they not only are they a great resource to refer to when you're going to do your final artwork, but they're also good to just warm up before you get into your final artwork. A lot of the time, I just think about it like you would stretch before going for a run. So you would do the same thing when you are creating a piece of artwork. So these are some of the pad options that are available at Delta. So we have the gray tones, the brown tones, the cool tones, the charcoal black, which is what I used for a lot of my testing, the cream white, and this is in the 9 by 12 as well as the 12 by 16. So the 9 by 12 is usually 49.95, but it's on sale for 29.97. And the 12 by 16 is usually 79.95 and it's on sale for 47.97. And as you can see, there's 14 different colors in the range. The pistachio green is a fantastic baseline color. If you do a lot of portraits, I find it's really nice. It gives you a nice, almost neutral green background, but it warms up your colors a lot, similar to the Indian yellow. It gives you that same kind of impression. So the sheets are available in 19 by 25-inch size. They're usually $13.95 per sheet, but they're on sale for $8.37. So there's some really great discounts at the moment. And Kay, you can correct me. I believe the discounts are on until the 23rd.
That's correct.